It can be a strange world out there. And every delicious mystery might just have a nugget of truth. This is Cryptid Nuggets.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Cryptid Nuggets, a Beastie Boys paranormal presentation. I am John Stenning, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Mitch DeAngelis. Hello, Mitch.
That's me.
That's you. How are you, my friend?
Not too bad. Not too bad. I wanted to start today because you and I had an interesting little aside discussion through text message a couple of days ago. For those who don't know, there's a YouTube channel that's called Bob Gimlin, and
yes.
It's not the Bob Gimlin from the Patterson film. It's a pseudonym that is like in tribute to the Bob Gimlin from the Patterson film. But basically, he's a Bigfoot guy. He does a lot of different videos about Bigfoot, and just recently he did this video that was sort of, John messaged me about it, which I would have never expected him to even do, where he's like overanalyzing.
Why not?
Well, I don't know. I just figured you wouldn't watch a channel like that. But like,
I saw it on the Bigfoot subreddit. That's where I get a lot of my Bigfoot news, is the Bigfoot subreddit, and someone put it up there, and so I watched it and I sent it to you because I think we're friends.
Yeah.
You don't think we're friends.
I consider it. You gotta understand, I went through my life with this friendship thing not really being a thing, so it's all new to me.
Right.
But
yeah, it's hard.
He's like overanalyzing a tree stump, basically, is what we both feel like, which I thought that was interesting that we both kind of had this feeling about it.
Yeah, so let's set this scene a bit, right? There's a video that not Bob himself did not take, but someone is out in the Canadian wilderness. I think it's Canada, right?
It's just south of that. I think it's that like little bridge of Minnesota that connects.
Oh, that's right.
Right, that's beneath Canada. Yeah.
The Upper Peninsula of Michigan, right?
Michigan, that's what
there.
It is. That connects to Minnesota.
Yeah.
I think that
connects to Minnesota.
Yeah.
It's called the UP, the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. It's the part that's not attached to the Mitt of Michigan. It should just be part of Minnesota.
Probably,
we don't have time to discuss that. Yeah. And what happens is there's like this long video and some guys like showing these falls that he's hiked to, and he pans over and he doesn't notice Bigfoot. I'm putting this in quotes. This is why you should be watching the podcast instead of listening to it if you're just listening. He notices Bigfoot well after the fact of himself being there, and then Bob Gimlin breaks down this video, and it looks like the silhouette of Bigfoot.
Yeah, but
it does not move.
It doesn't move. Not even like, and like it lingers on it for like a good like 3 seconds, and like there's not even even just like a gentle sway to it. It's like a rigid thing. Like, no. And I remember saying to you that could be anything from like a tree, from Bigfoot to a tree burl, which is like a fungal growth on a tree, right?
Yes.
So
a cancerous tree growth.
Right.
Yeah, it has more characteristics of a tree than it does a living being, for sure.
So I just want to say that by some off chance, if Bob Gimlin was to listen to this, listen, Bob, I love you. You're great. I love your videos.
Yep.
You bring a very reasonable and rational voice to the whole Bigfoot argument, but video analysis is not your strong suit, buddy. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't know. It does feel like sort of grasping at straws, with all due respect to Bob Gimlin and his channel. Successful guy, does cool stuff.
Like I said, big fan, but I just wanted to get that out there. Although he did raise a good point, which you and I also talked about, which is he pulled up the map of the Upper Peninsula, and he looked at the population density according to like the census, and it's something as little as like, I think he said it was like 1 person per square mile or something like that, right? It's like really not densely populated. And I think a lot of people really underestimate how densely how not densely populated a lot of areas of just the continental United States can be.
Yeah, sure. Especially if you come from our perspective, right? We live in southern New England. It's very densely populated. I believe at one point, at least in my childhood, Rhode Island was the most densely populated state in the nation. I believe maybe New Jersey might have that now or something, but still, very densely populated area. A lot of small little towns, right? A lot of enclaves of people living. Is it enclaves or on? It's enclaves.
I've always said it enclave.
Myself.
I've never heard it.
Enclave sounds
I've
better.
never heard it enclave.
Enclave, very French. Maybe for those people in Montreal, Canada, just north of New England.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are a lot of places in the middle of the United States that are very opposite of densely populated, right? Sparsely populated. And, one person per square mile is definitely not a lot. There's just not as many people around there. So, yeah. Just another way for us to maybe broaden our horizons and think that, it's possible that, things haven't been seen. I want Bigfoot to exist. Don't get me wrong. I just don't think that this,
I believe you when you say that.
Tree stump. I want Bigfoot to exist. Yeah. I want one day, just like I want aliens to exist. And if everyone would just believe all of these reports that the government has slowly been putting out over the past 36 months or whatever, right? We know aliens exist, essentially, and people just don't care for whatever reason. I don't know. The world moves too fast, attention spans. I don't know. We're all doomed. I don't have time to get into that really either. For those of you who don't know, this is a show about, paranormal stuff, cryptozoology, aliens, weird shit, if you will.
Basic. That's a great way to sum it up.
A show about weird shit. And what happens here is Mitch sort of pitches me a story of which this episode, I'm sure we went over it maybe some months ago. You mentioned something to me. Yeah. I basically have forgotten what we're talking about. And we paired up with a snack. I know what the snack is, obviously. That's sort of my forte. Yeah. But I'm sorry, before we get into it, do you have anything else that you want to talk about, Bigfoot news, paranormal news wise, or should we just get right to rolling?
All I will also say is, speaking of the Bigfoot subreddit, I was on there today, and there was somebody who had a review of Sasquatch Sunset, which we've talked about a couple of times now, and I thought it was funny because he was like, listen, I like Bigfoot, I'm not passionate about it, but then he proceeds to give, the most passionate rant about the movie ever, as if, it greatly offended him. Yeah. I don't know, I just thought that was funny. But, yeah, from his review, it sounded like the movie was not that good. But, what's that quote from Tommy Boy? I didn't really expect much. You can get a good look at a T-bone by sticking your head up a butcher's ass. No, I fucked it up already.
Not a butcher's ass.
At a bull's ass, but you better take the butcher's word for it. So already, I wasn't sure if I wanted to see it, Sasquatch Sunset. I mean, I'll probably end up seeing it anyway, but I'm pretty sure at this point that from what I've read about what the movie's like, I'm like, this just sounds like fart and toilet jokes for, an hour and a half of people dressed up as Bigfoot. Which, hey, if that's your cup of tea, that's fine. But, I feel like they could have done more. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I think I'll probably hate watch it at some point. I just won't. I know I won't enjoy it. I'll, be mad about it. But that's fine. That's part. I know it is called hate watching, but that is something that I actually enjoy doing. Watching things that I think are bad, like most modern Star Wars things. That's sort of how I.
Oh yeah, we could talk at length about that. I'm sure. Yeah. That's a
right. This is not. It's not a Star Wars podcast. We get a. Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah. Or fortunately. Probably more fortunately than unfortunately.
At the current state of that franchise, fortunately, it's not a Star Wars podcast.
But what do you got cooking up for me today? What's stirring in the pot that is Mitch's mind?
All right, so I'm going to tell you. So just a little bit ago, you mentioned that, you want a lot of this stuff to exist. You want Bigfoot to exist. You want aliens to exist, right? I think today's subject is going to be something you kind of don't want to exist.
Oh.
Okay.
Now,
And
is that just based on what you know about me, or do you think this is more of like
I feel like any rational
humankind?
I feel like any
Gotcha.
rational, sane person would not want today's subject creature to exist.
Okay.
So
all right.
I will say that this episode was a really tough subject to research, and that's not because of any lack of information. It's because I have really, really intense arachnophobia.
Oh.
So,
okay.
You know, it's a struggle for me to even look at pictures of spiders. You know, I get like the creepy crawlies, you know, like I feel them on me. It's like, you know, like my hair raises, I tense up like this, and I'm like, ugh.
Yeah, Mitch, this is another reason to watch the podcast instead of just... Mitch was just like doing this creep out movement with it, but he also kind of looked like a spider while he was doing it. Like, it was almost like spider personified.
Yeah.
Your shoulders hunched and you were doing this thing with your fingers.
Yeah,
like,
I had like no neck. It was wild.
Yeah.
So the subject this week...
spiders.
Yeah. Subject this week is going to be giant spiders. So now...
Cool. Okay.
Before we even get to giant spiders, we should probably establish what constitutes the giant in a giant spider, right? So we should probably talk about spiders that we know. And this is why this was a tough thing to research, because I had to do a bunch of research about spiders. And, you know, every website that's going to have information about spiders is going to have just a big old fucking picture of a tarantula just right there. You know, and it's not like a shot of, like, a tarantula on a log 200 feet away. You know, it's like some fucking epic close-up. Like, this thing wants to, like, you know, look into my soul. Fucking creepy. Anyway, there are over 50,000 species of known spiders in the world today. The largest known spider by body mass is the Goliath bird eater, which is known scientifically as Theraphosa blondie, right? These are the big tarantulas. They're native to the Amazon rainforest in South America. They have kind of like a light brown color, hence the name like blondie in their scientific name. The largest documented one weighs 162 grams. That's 6.2 ounces. And it has a body length of about 13 centimeters or 5.1 inches. Now, when you measure spiders, you usually combine it with its leg span. And the very largest bird eater on record increases to about 30 centimeters, which is about 12 inches. Although 6 to 8 inches is more common. So, you know, the biggest of these are about a foot in length.
Of these blondie ones,
Of
right?
these Theraphosa blondie ones. And remember, these are only the biggest spider by mass. So we're talking like weight here, right? We're talking like weight class.
Yeah.
So now, despite the name, I thought this was interesting. The Goliath bird eater doesn't eat birds that often. I guess it's just a matter of like when they first discovered it, it was like eating a bird, so they named it that, only to find out that most of the time it eats like other bugs and like small reptiles, like small lizards and stuff like that. So
can I ask you another question about it real quick?
Yeah.
So what was it called? Something blondie, right?
Theraphosa blondie is the scientific name. The common name is the Goliath bird eater.
Is it known to sing any songs? Maybe like 1980s hit "Call Me" or the 1978 "Heart of Glass"? Does it do that at all? Or
not to my knowledge, although I don't think I would want to hear any song sung by a spider.
Okay, all right. So you sort of alluding to this is the biggest one by mass.
Yes.
Are there larger in terms of what size? Just like general size,
like general length. So yes, the largest spider by leg span is the giant huntsman spider.
Okay, I've heard of this one.
Right, scientific name Heteropoda maxima, and this is native to Laos. So it's only found in one region of the world. The giant. Oh, it's actually that's a lie because I also found out that they are native now to Florida and are an invasive species. So, the giant huntsman is not a tarantula. It's a separate type of spider. It belongs to the huntsman spider family, which are they're web-weaving spiders, unlike a tarantula, which is more of like a hunting spider. Its total body length is only about 1.6 inches on average. However, when you combine that with its leg span, It easily reaches a foot in length, sometimes growing slightly over a foot in length. So, and this is also a fairly recently discovered spider, believe it or not. Only recently discovered in 2001, which is, in the grand scheme of human history, is not that long ago, right?
But it's as big as a dinner plate.
Basically, yeah. So now, let's talk about, those are living spiders today. So if we look at the fossil record, you would probably think like, oh, there were probably bigger spiders back then and they got smaller over time. Ironically, that's actually not true, because the largest prehistoric spider to ever exist that we have in the fossil record is known as Mongol arachne jurassica. It used to also be known as Nephalia jurassica, and it had a total body length of just under an inch, like 0.97 inches. And it had a leg span of only about 2.2 inches. Now, its closest living relatives are what are known as orb weavers, which are very, very common spiders all around the world. You probably see them in your garden, right? They're the ones that have kind of like that fat carapace body and like a little tiny head, So what was once, though, believed to be a spider, in terms of the fossil record, is this thing that is known as megarachne, right? And arachne means spider, hence arachnid. So megarachne had a body length of 21 inches, or 54 centimeters, and it lived during the late Carboniferous period 300 million years ago. And now, when they first discovered this thing, they thought it was a giant spider because that's what it looked like. However, what we now know about it is that it's not actually a spider at all. It's in fact another type of arthropod that's known as a Eurypterid, which is more commonly known as a sea scorpion. So, sea scorpions are not arachnids. They're another type of arthropod. They're more closely related to crustaceans. They're not scorpions at all. They were just named that way because they kind of resembled them. And it should be noted that the largest Eurypterid, or sea scorpion, to ever exist was a creature called Yacalopterus, which lived 410 million years ago and measured about 14 feet in length. So,
oh boy.
Yeah. So imagine, some sort of weird crab scorpion that was twice as tall as you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So spiders, like I said, being a type of arachnid, have some other close relatives. Not just in terms of being an arthropod, right? Because as an arthropod, they're related to other bugs, they're related to crustaceans. But just as an arachnid, some of their close relatives are scorpions, mites, harvestmen, which are more popularly known probably as daddy long legs around here. And, there's ticks, right? Now, the one that's probably most comparable to appearance to a spider is an animal that's known as a solifuge. Better known probably as a camel spider. Have you ever heard of a camel spider?
Yeah, they're fucking huge and they live in the desert.
Yes, exactly. And they're also famous for chasing people.
Right.
And the reason they actually do that, I found out, is not because they actually want to come after you, but they don't like the sun. There's something about the sun that is harmful to them. So when they're out during the day and they see you walking by and they see your shadow, they're trying to
chase that.
They're basically chasing your shadow, trying to stay in the shade. But of course, you have this big spider-looking thing that's chasing you, which must be absolutely horrifying.
Yeah, for sure.
So the largest solifuges grow to about 6 inches, including their legs. So big, but not that big, right?
Sure.
Now, in terms of, popular culture and mythology and stuff like that, giant spiders, much larger than everything we just talked about, have always been kind of like a mainstay, there's giant spider-like creatures in Greek mythology, many African mythologies, Japanese mythology, just to name a few, right? There are famous villains in things like The Hobbit, and, there's Hagrid's gigantic pet spider in Harry Potter named Aragog, right? There are common monstrous enemies in things like video games and like tabletop games like Dungeons and Dragons, and they've been the subject of movies too, giant spiders. On the conservative end of the scale of giant spider, you have movies like Arachnophobia, right?
Yep.
And then on the more liberal end, you have movies like Eight-Legged Freaks with David Arquette.
Oh yeah. Yes.
So now, what if I told you that out there in the history of the world, spiders measuring far larger than have ever been documented by science have been reported by real people in tropical regions all around the world?
Yeah, I mean, that sounds right. That's where I would expect it to take place, like a, humid, jungly type. As much as I want to believe in the Harry Potter giant spiders in the English forests, it just doesn't make as much sense because it gets cold there, the humidity. How big are we talking?
Well, we're going to get to that. So just you wait.
Wow, okay.
Right?
Okay.
Because that's also,
Don't ask Mitch that question.
Some contention about that. And we're also going to get into the scientific contention about all of this later on, too. Yep. But for starters, perhaps the most famous cryptozoological spider is a species of spider that's purported to be native to equatorial Africa, particularly the Congo jungle, and surrounding areas like Cameroon. So I can't also help, John, that I feel like we came full circle because our very first podcast that we ever did together, I was on an episode of your podcast, The Hold Up, and the movie we talked about was Congo.
Yes, Mitch loves the movie Congo. Mitch loves Amy. And yeah, we talked about that quite some time ago. Yeah. A few years now, probably. Yeah. 3 or 4 years even. Yeah.
I would say that was probably like 2019, probably the end of 2019, maybe even earlier.
Yeah, pre-COVID society, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And so you're to tell me that not only does the nation of the Congo have talking gorillas, but it also is rumored to have giant spiders?
Yes, in fact.
Okay.
The most common name for the animal online, if you were to look up, Congolese giant spider, is J'ba Fofi, which is in the Baka language that's spoken in Cameroon, and it translates to giant or great spider. Now, the common language around the Congo River Basin is called Lingala, and there's a bunch of regional dialects. And these creatures in Lingala are called Mobile Alulu, which also means giant or great spider. So, I will preface this, that much of the research into giant spiders in Africa in the world of cryptozoology comes from a man named William Gibbons. And Gibbons is a bit of a controversial figure in cryptozoology, as if that could possibly be a thing, I'm sure some people are thinking. But the reason for this... the reason for this is a lot of his time in Africa is spent searching for what is believed to be a living sauropod dinosaur that's called Mokele Mbembe. And these expeditions to find that dinosaur kind of have this creationist bent to them. So there's sort of like an underlying religious, political reason for them. Nevertheless, though, the fact remains that Gibbons is putting his boots on the ground in Africa, and I'm sitting in an office chair. So I have no choice but to kind of take his word on this. So,
sure.
He spent a large amount of time in Africa hunting for this dinosaur, and he still goes on expeditions to this day. And he's also collected a bunch of information about various giant spiders across equatorial Africa. And yet, surprisingly, the first report of a giant spider in Africa he ever received wasn't even told to him on one of his adventures, but actually in his home country of England. So, in 1980, Margaret Lloyd moved from Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe, to England and met Gibbons. And during a correspondence that they had, she told him the story of her parents, Reginald and Marguerite Lloyd, and their encounter with this massive arachnid in 1938 in what was then known as the Belgian Congo, which is now part of just Congo. So, Reginald and Marguerite had just gotten married, and for their honeymoon, they decided to go on an African safari throughout the Congo. And, they're traveling along this forest road. It's about twilight. The sun's starting to set. They're on their way between towns. They're in an automobile, like an old Ford, and they're forced to come to a sudden stop when out from the nearby underbrush, this large dark brown shape starts to crawl out and onto the middle of the road. And at first, Reginald and Marguerite are expecting, maybe it's like a monkey or something. But then they become absolutely shocked when it was apparent that they're not seeing a monkey. Instead, it's a large spider, about 4 to 5 feet in length, and about the height of a small dog. It was dark brown in color, and appeared to be hairy, like a tarantula. And now the creature halted in the middle of the road, some distance away from their vehicle. So Reginald, he goes and tries to retrieve his camera that's in the back of the truck to take a photograph of it. And when he does so, the big spider, it rears up on its hind legs. Like, if you've ever seen a tarantula, like, assume the defensive position, like it's about to lunge, it does that, and he's like, and then it goes back down, and then it scurries off into the underbrush before he could photograph it. And apparently, this event bothered his wife so much that they wanted to leave Africa for good. And they did leave Africa for a while, returning to England, and then later on they went back and settled in Rhodesia, and then so on and so forth. So, that is the first known account of a giant spider sighting in Africa by the Western world. The people living in the Congo River Basin apparently know this creature quite well. So, to them, the creature that they call the J'ba Fofi in Cameroon, or the Mobile Ilulu in the Congo, measures about 3 to 5 feet in diameter, and it's a web-spinning spider. It's known to spin these very thick, strong webs they're large enough to span between trees on, like, forest trails. And they'll feed on small mammals that get caught in them, like monkeys and sometimes even small gazelle. And if a human child is unlucky to wind up in one of these, apparently it'll feed on them too. They're incredibly venomous. In fact, their venom is supposed to be a powerful anesthetic that basically makes you numb to any pain while they eat you alive. And they also have been known to come into villages and steal livestock. And according to witnesses, they're usually a dark brown in color, which matches what Reginald saw. And they blend into trees pretty seamlessly, except for their purple abdomens. Now, when these spiders are first born, they measure a few inches in length, and they're actually a yellowish color. And they're born from these white peanut-shaped eggs. And then they darken as they age. And they live in these layers that are made out of tree leaves that are woven together and sort of resemble the shape of like a thatched traditional African hut. They're most commonly seen along the Congo River and all the numerous tributaries and creeks and stuff that lead into it. So they're always found in or around water sources. So in 2002, Gibbons, who has collected all this information, he was on a search to find Bokele and Bembe while in Cameroon, and he took the time to ask the chief of the Walele tribe, Timbo Robert, about these giant spiders. And Robert informed him that, if Gibbons had come 2 years earlier in 2000, he could have shown Gibbons a specimen, because there was one that was located, within a mile or two from their village.
They just knew where it lived?
Yeah, they just knew where it was. He could have showed it to him 2 years ago. Unfortunately, by the time Gibbons arrived, it had already moved on. And Robert also told Gibbons that these creatures were becoming far less common than they used to. So That's also a trend that Gibbons has noticed about other African tribes saying that about these giant spiders is, 20 years ago they were everywhere. But now, and this was in 2002, so 20 years ago, so in the 1980s, they would have been everywhere. But in the 2000s, they're starting to disappear. And it should be noted that these developing nations, Cameroon, the Congo, are undergoing heavy deforestation and have been since the 2000s, where they're cutting down a lot of the rainforest to make farmland. So there has not been any officially documented sighting of this giant spider by Gibbons on any of his expeditions, just like the dinosaur that he spends most of his time searching for. However,
naturally,
yes. However, in 2014, a trail camera video supposedly captured by campers in Mapchilin, Mozambique, which is on the border of the Democratic People's Republic of the Congo, which should not be confused with just the Congo, appears to show, and I'm going to put show in quotations because it's incredibly blurry and hard to tell what you're looking at, right? Of course. But it appears to show one of these massive arachnids. So this video, you can find it pretty easily on YouTube. Just type in J'ba Fofi camera footage. That's J'ba Fofi. And what it shows is it's a camera that's in black and white because it's nighttime footage positioned at a watering hole. And if you watch the far right of the screen, maybe about a minute into the video, this sort of like squat, scampering, like close to the ground shape just kind of scurries out of the darkness for a little bit, and then just like scurry towards the water's edge and just sits there for a little bit, and then it just disappears off the right side of the screen. Now, like I said, it could be fucking anything. Like, you literally can't tell. You literally can't tell. Like, I guess it kind of looks like a spider, and I'm sure if you have an active imagination, you can picture the spider. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But, there's no way to tell. Now, in 2023, a photo began circulating online from a unknown photographer who in the story goes by the name of Thomas. So already, you should be kind of skeptical about this. We have a photo from an unknown source. However, I'm one of those people who thinks that the Mayaka skunk ape photo is real, and that's a photo from an unknown source. So, so as I like to say to my friends, I'm the biggest hypocrite I know. Now, this picture, according to the backstory provided with it, Thomas, he's out there backpacking in the Congo, because the Congo is much safer than the Democratic People's Republic of the Congo. Again, don't confuse those for your own safety. And he's out there looking for, flora and fauna to take a picture of. And apparently they came across this gigantic spider. And the photo he took shows the canopy of the forest with all the tree leaves and stuff like that. And there's this massive, large brown spider that's outstretched between trees. So, it looks absolutely massive. And it's sitting on a web, which you can't see the web in the photo, probably because of, the way the light is reflecting off of it or whatever. And, it's certainly possible that it's a picture of a gigantic spider. But it's probably also possible that it's a simple case of trick photography, because, the spider, it could just be a normal-sized spider that's, really close to the lens and has a very shallow depth of field, right? So it looks massive in a tree canopy, but really that's not what's happening. So...
yeah, some sort of forced perspective deal.
Exactly. A little bit of movie magic, if you will, right?
Yeah, right.
So... with all the information I gave for you so far, John, I have two questions for you. I guess my first is, do you have any chance of possibly thinking giant spiders might be legit? And number two, how how fast would you run away if you saw one?
No, I have. I know this all sounds so stupid. I mean, like I said in the beginning, I want to believe it, but this doesn't even. I don't know. Maybe if I saw the video or like saw the photos, but I'm not really that quick to believe something just because of, something that seems like it could be forced perspective or something that could be manipulated. You know what I mean? I guess also because this, the world that they exist in is, and this is a very John-centric way of thinking, but because those places are so far from me, it's not like that exciting to think about. I mean, I don't know, obviously.
Well, I'm glad you said that based on what I'm going to tell you next, but please continue.
Okay. Yeah, I'm far from convinced. I'm far from convinced at this point.
Okay.
Sure. And,
Fair enough. Now, I'm glad you mentioned that the Congo, so far away. Why would I ever have to worry about a giant spider? Well, we're going to return to a place that we've actually been to before, at least in terms of the podcast. We did an episode about Louisiana before where we talked about vampire legends. And, well, it turns out that there have been giant spider sightings in Louisiana.
Okay.
So, in 1948, this is the one that's very commonly retold. In 1948, this takes place near Leesville, Louisiana, which is a bit more rural. It's not, the hustling, bustling city of New Orleans. There's this family there named the Sladens, and William Sladen is the patriarch of this family, and he's walking to church along a road with his wife, and they have 3 young grandchildren. And they're walking to church for an evening service. And out from the nearby brush, this large black spider crawls out of the ditch near the road, and it just casually crosses the road in front of them. And Sladen described the spider as being as big as a wash tub. And for context here, a wash tub... Well, that's what they would have used back then for a lot of things, right? So it would have been a common household object back then. A wash tub is like a big basin, usually wooden or sometimes metal or ceramic, but usually wooden, usually from 1 to 3 feet wide. So he's talking about a spider that was about probably 1 to 3 feet wide, probably a foot tall. And Dr. Carl Schuker, who is a well-known cryptozoologist and also a professional zoologist too, he even has a species of jellyfish named after him, I believe. He's done a lot of work in documenting several giant spider sightings from Louisiana. And it turns out that this isn't a one-off thing. Apparently, there's been quite a few giant spider sightings in Louisiana, centered in or around Fort Polk in Louisiana, which recently just got renamed, but... in all the sightings and reports, it's referred to as Fort Polk. And these sightings come from U.S. service members who say that there's some type of large type of arachnid that lives in the nearby area, who they encounter semi-frequently during training exercises. And basically, the common things that some of them are a little fantastical. There's one where, a guy, trips and falls on a web and, the spider tries to attack him and all that. But for the most part, according to all these service members, one guy saw it, climbing on the roof of a house. Another one saw it hiding in the brush, right? Some of them have seen it scaling trees. It's a dark brown or black-colored spider, similar in appearance to a tarantula. And, it's hairy. It varies in size anywhere from about 3 feet in length to the biggest one was 6 feet in length, including its leg span, which sounds absolutely massive to me. And it had these large fangs that were kind of white or iridescent. And usually, like I said, seen hiding under leaves or in a burrow. It employs a trap door ambush style of hunting where it'll lay a web on the ground and ambush, small animals, even tried to ambush a soldier who had tripped and fallen over at one point. Most of these sightings take place during the evening or at nighttime, indicating that the spider might be nocturnal, which I find sort of interesting because, as we talked about earlier, solifuges don't like nighttime. Maybe it's not a type of spider. Maybe it's actually some type of solifuge. But also, then you have cases of these service members trying to report this to their chain of command and being told, no, you're crazy. There's no giant spider. Don't say anything about this. You'll be ridiculed and all that. So you can find all of these reports on his blog. They're all a little too detailed to really go into here because there's a bunch of stuff we still got to talk about. But another thing that's interesting about it, and a pattern that's starting to arise, is a lot of these spiders are being seen near sources of water because there's a lot of wetland near Fort Polk, and the spiders in the Congo are being seen near the Congo River, and even near Leesville in Louisiana, it's sort of wetlands. There's a lot of, Louisiana is very swampy. It's bayou-y. There's a lot of water around. And another sighting occurred, believe it or not, in Georgia, where another cryptozoologist, his name's Ken Gerhard. If you've ever seen a lot of cryptozoologist documentaries, he's kind of the guy that wears that cowboy hat all the time. So you might have recognized him from that. He documented a giant spider sighting by an EMT named Christopher Williams, and this one I find a little more believable. So Williams was mowing his lawn, and sometimes when you mow the lawn and there's a tree in the way, you might bump into the side of the tree a little bit. Well, he did so, and then he sort of caught in his periphery vision something fell out of the tree, and he looks to the side, and there's this massive, what he described as a wolf spider. There's this massive wolf spider that he said was at least a foot long. Now that's way bigger than any wolf spider on record, and about the size of a house cat. So before he could go retrieve his camera or cell phone to photograph it, of course,
Yeah, this is a common thing.
Yeah. The massive spider scurried up the tree and disappeared. So now, South America, home to tarantulas. Many tarantulas. There's tarantulas in the United States as well. But when people think of tarantulas, I think they think of the Goliath bird eater, in South America, the one we talked about, in the Amazon. And in 2008, there was an episode of the TV show Monster Quest where they sent an expedition to Venezuela with a tarantula expert, where locals told them about a massive spider, which is not uncommon to find. And they said that they're anywhere from 3 to 6 feet in length, and it's kind of the same thing as it is in Africa, known to attack livestock and small dogs, and they live in burrows underground, or they live in woven layers of leaves and stuff like that. Now, of course, they didn't find any tarantulas any monster tarantulas on the show, but they did find very big in terms of what we know of tarantulas, which I thought was interesting, where they found that, they found several examples of these Goliath bird eaters, which were just as big as the biggest ones on record, which says to me that maybe they could grow a little bigger. But as far as 3 to 6 feet, I think that's a big stretch. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
So, in the Pacific, the, the areas around the Pacific Ocean, Australia, Asia, giant spiders have been sighted over there, too. Again, usually in tropical areas. So, in 1942, on the island of Papua New Guinea, there's an Australian soldier. He's fighting against the Japanese he's part of this patrol group to make sure that the Japanese army that's under siege in their camp, they don't slip past the blockade. So they're doing these patrols. It's about nighttime. He steps away from the group for a moment to, relieve himself. And he's standing there taking the piss. And all of a sudden he notices there's a gigantic spider web in front of me. and I mean gigantic, like stretching between trees. And that's when he looks down and he notices that on the ground, on the other side of the web, watching him very, very closely, is a dog-sized spider. He compared it to the size of a German Shepherd puppy. And it's watching him intently. And it was black and hairy. And basically at that moment, he got right the fuck out of there. Which I don't blame him, because I think if I did that... Well, first of all, I think if I saw that, my 10-1 would instantly turn to a 10-2. And then I would get the fuck out of there. So, that sighting, I want to point out, is usually conflated with a different sighting that also occurred on Papua New Guinea during World War II by an American. And this was reported to Coast AM, where a man named Craig shared the story of his grandfather, who had been on the island as a United States service member, where he encountered a massive spider, which he compared to being the size of a dinner plate, which sounds much more believable in the realm of this sort of thing. Interestingly, this spider was not black and hairy like all these other ones. Instead, this one was emerald green in color and had a shiny exoskeleton. And apparently, his grandfather was so freaked out by it, he drew his machete and hacked it to pieces.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. Did he take a home part as a souvenir?
Nope. Of course, right? Didn't take any evidence.
Yeah, where are all the dead spiders? Where are all the dead carcasses? Where are they? Where are the cobwebs from these huge webs?
Exactly.
You know?
Right?
It's just out of control.
So, here's where it's going to get interesting in a second. Now, all of these...
It better.
It will. Because we're going to turn this whole thing on its head, right? But there's one last story that I really think is going to frame this up nice and well. So, in 2013, on the website Cryptomundo, Craig Woolheater, another cryptozoologist...
What a source.
Yeah.
What a source. Cryptomundo.com.
Cryptomundo.com. He posts a report that was given to him by... This is the internet, so, you know... the user, Mr. Maxima, which is his username on the website, right?
Okay.
He shares an encounter that his father-in-law had with giant spiders in the Vietnam War. And his father-in-law was part of a 5-man reconnaissance team, and he said that they frequently encountered large spiders that were the size of dinner plates or slightly bigger, you know, about like 1 to 2 feet, which, including their legs, they were about like 20 to 30 inches wide. And he said that these spiders were almost always encountered in or around creeks and rivers. And that when they shot them with M16 rifles, they were so tough and hardy that they could still move around.
Wow.
Yes. But again, the thing I want to really stress here is that all these giant spiders are being seen near sources of water. Which...
Yeah. It's the essence of life.
Yeah. But that says to me that maybe it's not a spider at all. So...
Oh.
There's a problem with all these giant spider things. And the thing is that from everything we know about spiders today, it would be physically impossible for spiders to grow to an increased size than the current largest spiders on record. And the reason for this has to do with the internal makeup of a spider. So a spider has a respiratory system that's known as book lungs. And it's named that way because when you look at it from a certain angle, it looks like the pages of a book. And it's basically several chambers or tubes that are, you know, they're next to each other and they fill up with air. The problem is these lungs are highly inefficient, even for regular-sized spiders. In fact, this is one of the reasons that spiders tend to be kind of lazy. You know, they tend to hang out in their webs. They tend to, you know, if they're trapdoor spiders, they hunt in a trapdoor style type thing. If there's a spider in your bedroom, you know, he just hangs out in that corner. And he just hangs out there all day long, you know what I mean? It's because these lungs can't really support sustained activity for long periods of time. And when you combine that with the blood system they are a hemolymph, which is different from our blood. It's their equivalent. Theirs is based on copper. Our blood is an iron-based blood. And copper-based blood is far less efficient than iron-based blood. So that means it carries less oxygen through their circulatory system. So taking all this, if you were to scale just a normal spider up, according to what in physics is called the square cube law, and basically that law states that as something grows in size, its volume grows faster than the surface area. So what we know about these terrible, inefficient systems is if you were to make a spider larger, they wouldn't function at all.
Right, it would like sort of collapse on itself, right?
It wouldn't be able to get enough air. Exactly.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Wouldn't be enough blood flow. You would have to scale that internal system up so much that it would have to be larger than the spider, for it to work.
Itself, right.
Yeah.
Right.
So also spiders have an exoskeleton, which is extremely heavy and cumbersome even for regular spiders. So that's, again, part of the reason why spiders are, relative to their size, they're kind of fast, but, they're kind of slow-moving. It's because their skeletons are kind of heavy, and they don't have the best musculature to be able to lift their exoskeleton. So, for a giant spider to exist, it would have to have a completely different way of breathing, a completely different way of circulating oxygen, and a very different anatomy. So, here's the thing, though, is that, like I said, all of these giant spider sightings are occurring in or around bodies of fresh or even salt water. And crustaceans are fellow arthropods and are related to arachnids, such as spiders, and some of them can have some very spider-like appearances. So, the most famous of which you would probably think is the spider crab, named because it resembles a spider. Now, the largest of the spider crabs is the Japanese spider crab, which can grow to an impressive 12 feet with its leg span. Meanwhile, the largest terrestrial crab is a pretty famous crab that's known as the coconut crab. And
yeah, they're huge.
They are huge, and they breathe air. And they have a special set of lungs that have developed to breathe air. It's called a bronchial stegal lung, and they evolved from gills. And basically, the way they work is they're distributed all throughout its body, but they require water to function. So that's why coconut crabs are never found too far away from water, because they have to wet the lungs with water to get it to, circulate the blood, the oxygen throughout the blood system. And the coconut crab, like I said, is the largest terrestrial arthropod and the largest terrestrial invertebrate that we currently know of. They can grow to about 3 feet across in leg span. And if you ever see a coconut crab, they can do things like climb trees, cling to surfaces. They can sometimes look very spider-like.
Yeah, for sure.
So, it could stand to reason that maybe at least some of these giant spiders being sighted near these bodies of waters are not actually spiders. But maybe there are some other type of arthropod, like a coconut crab or something related to a coconut crab that's specifically adapted for terrestrial life. Or maybe, it could even potentially be a type of spider that has evolved a certain, just like a coconut crab has, with a lung system that's more efficient but requires some type of water to keep it stimulated and working. It could potentially be a spider-like creature that has done that as well. Of course, the problem with that theory is that no crab that we know of produces silk to make webs. And also, crabs are not hairy unless, you have some leftover crab and you leave it out and it gets moldy. Then it might be a little hairy.
Oh my God.
So, in terms of the giant spider thing, in terms of them being an actual giant spider, it's basically scientifically impossible from what we know of.
Right.
However, my gut feeling says, especially in places where crustaceans might not necessarily be common or a commonly encountered creature, or like especially like the Congo, which is doesn't really have a coastline, a freshwater type of crustacean, like a coconut crab styled thing, could potentially, I feel, be mistaken for a spider, especially by people who only have the concept of spider and not coconut crab. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So reasonable.
Yeah. So I feel like, in terms of some of these things, what people or in these tribes and stuff have been seeing are some type of crustacean. And that also is part of the reason why that story from Vietnam, when they were able to shoot these crustaceans and they were so tough and hardy that like they could still move around even after being shot with an M16. Now, I've never shot a coconut crab with an M16. I certainly don't want somebody to shoot a coconut crab with an M16. But my gut feeling is, because of the hard shell and all that, and like how strong their muscle are to carry around such a big shell, it probably could walk after being shot. Just probably not for very long, but it probably could.
Yeah, I mean, you see, things flail around after they've been injured anyway, like even certain, like the sort of death throes of anything dying. It's not beyond the realm of possibility, whereas it seems like the giant actual spider, like a giant arachnid, is beyond the realm of possibility because of what we know scientifically about its body and its mechanics. Sure, in the dark, a giant coconut crab scurrying across the road, someone might think it's a spider, especially if, they're not educated properly about what a coconut crab is or what a water-dwelling crustacean is, and they think, oh, big spider,
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that seems much more plausible,
And I want to hit with another anecdote of a personal story of me, which I think will tie this together really well. When I was maybe like 10 years old, my aunt and uncle used to have like a timeshare condo in Cape Cod, and we went out core hogging, which for those not from the Rhode Island, Massachusetts area is basically clamming, right? We going out and wading into the water, picking up clams to collect them to, make all kinds of seafood dishes and stuff like that. So I was maybe about, like I said, maybe 10 years old, maybe a little younger, maybe 9 or 8. I can't remember exactly. But, I'm in the water. I'm moving my hands around underwater, fishing around, trying to feel for clams and stuff like that are floating by. And I remember I feel something, and I pick it up. And I look at it, And to me, at that moment in time, it was some kind of crab. I'm almost certain it was some kind of crab. But to me, at that moment in time, all my brain saw was 2-sectioned body, 8 legs. And it said, big spider. And I flung that thing as hard as I could in whatever direction, my hand went like that, and I was done for the day after that. I was like, no one told me there's fucking spiders in the ocean that big, Yeah. But,
yeah, terrifying.
It was 100% some type of crab. I've never identified what type of crab it is. I'm sure it's probably a very common type of crab, right? To me, at the time, it looked like it had the outline of like a tarantula. But, what I know about spiders and crabs now is there's no spiders in the ocean. Crabs can kind of look spider-like, But that's even more why part of me leans towards the idea that maybe these aren't spiders after all. Maybe they're some type of crustacean.
Yeah, if I had to choose to believe, which I still don't.
Yeah, fair enough. I don't necessarily
believe
either.
I would say that it's more of a water-based crustacean mixed with general human ignorance, and you get stories that sort of sway and build. And if you pass the story on from generation to generation. Someone calls George Norrie over on Coast to Coast back in 2004 about their, grandpa that fought in World War II in the 40s.
Yeah.
Things, right? We all can spin a yarn. We all can tell a tale, and something like that sounds exciting. It can grow its, the tail itself grows its own set of 8 legs, if you will, and
yeah, it's a web of
becomes
lies.
bigger than it was. It is. It's a web of lies.
Yeah.
It's a web of lies. Yeah, but still interesting. Yeah, interesting. I mean, I don't know. Big spiders. I think spiders are super interesting because of like the things that you mentioned.
Yeah.
Their lungs are different, right? They have this like copper-based blood instead of iron-based. They're definitely different than a lot of. They're the type of beings. And I guess cephalopods are similar to this to me. Octopus, squids. They're the type of beings that make me believe that like aliens came here hundreds of thousands of years ago.
I've heard. Have you ever heard the theory that octopuses might have originated on a comet or something that like struck us? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I've heard similar theories about spiders themselves that like, they have this own sort of way of communicating, and if the world maybe were different in terms of like the oxygen levels in our atmosphere,
I've heard that too.
Like that their intelligence could be, rated differently than the way it is now. Same thing with octopus. I know people that do not eat cephalopods because of how intelligent an octopus can be, right?
Yeah.
We've seen octopus, like, in certain aquariums break out of cages over and over again because they know how to manipulate locks and stuff.
Yep.
And so, I think there is a lot to that. Is it necessarily like this giant 8-legged freak arachnophobia type of jungle beast that, like, gets on a cargo ship and lands in Florida? I don't know about that, but I do like the idea of, studying them for their intelligence or for their, being different, if you will, as opposed to say just like, mammals, right?
Yeah.
That like we all sort of operate the same, right? We all have like the same bone structure. We all have the same amount of bones. We all breathe the same way, right? From a tiny mouse to a giant elephant to humans in between, right? There's a lot of similarities, whereas like, cephalopods or arachnids are very, very different in that regard. So I do find that interesting.
Yeah.
It's
For
just
sure,
like,
for sure.
Yeah.
I will say, having arachnophobia all my life, I've always hated spiders, right? But after being forced to really research them for this, I don't believe in giant spiders one bit, but I will say that I have found a newfound appreciation for spiders. I still prefer if they keep a very healthy distance away from me.
Sure.
You won't catch me in the jungles of the Amazon or the Middle East being chased by solifuges anytime soon.
Yeah.
But I will say I agree with you 100% that everything from their internal makeup to how smart they can be is just absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah. Well, that was a lot of fun. Thanks, Mitch.
Yeah, you're welcome.
We're going to take a quick break, and, you mentioned South America. We're going to talk about a root vegetable that is native to South America, and we're going to snack on some stuff in just a bit right after the break.
Awesome.
All right. See you there. Just on the other side of this. Maybe I'll play a trailer for 8-Legged Freaks or something.
Yeah.
David Arquette screaming while being chased by a giant spider.
Oh, there's a line in that trailer where he yells like 8-Legged Freaks or something. I don't remember the exact line, but I remember it was like the equivalent of like Samuel L. Jackson, in Snakes on a Plane being like, I'm tired of these motherfucking snakes on this motherfucking plane.
Yes.
He was like, he yelled something like, I'm tired of you 8-Legged Freaks or some shit like that. So maybe that would be
see
perfect.
how close you are. I'm gonna play it right here.
Get back, you 8-Legged Freaks!
All right, hello and welcome back. Thank you to David Arquette and the production team at 8-Legged Freaks for providing us with that snippet. I mentioned it earlier, a root vegetable native to South America. We are talking about cassava, also known as yuca or manioc, depending on where you're from. Or I remember I'm a big fan of Survivor, and there was one season of Survivor where they were digging for manioc. They found it and they were eating it. And I had no idea it was the same thing as cassava until doing research for this episode. But it is a staple food in tropical countries due to its versatility and ability to grow in poor soil conditions. Mitch, have you ever heard of cassava before doing this podcast?
No, I have actually never heard of cassava. I will be honest.
Thank you.
And
thank you for being honest.
Yeah. Although I just thought of this just now. And this is unrelated to cassava, but related to a snack. Did we miss a golden opportunity because we talked about the Congo in this, did we miss a golden opportunity to eat some sesame cake?
Wow, maybe we should have. Yeah, we should have eaten sesame cake. Yeah,
Stop
right.
eating my sesame cake!
Yeah, Tim Curry. Wow, what a legend. No, maybe we just have to do that as an addendum.
Yeah.
We review sesame cake because I've never had sesame cake.
Oh, really?
Either.
Oh, I've never had sesame cake either. Maybe in the future we'll do an episode about the Congo dinosaur that William Gibbons is always hunting for, and we'll eat some sesame cake.
Yeah, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Yeah, cassava. I think I've had cassava chips a couple times before, but definitely not. I don't think they're a common snack by any means, right? We are having a chip varietal. It's a very common preparation of cassava, typically made by slicing them. Really thinly. Cassava is a root vegetable, like I mentioned, right? So it grows underground. You slice it very thinly and fry them or bake them until they become crispy, and then seasoned accordingly with various flavors, salt, pepper, spices, all that good stuff. They in the past sort of 10 or 20 years, I think they've become a lot more popular in culture due to their crunchy texture and unique flavor. I love a chip. Mitch, I think you love a chip, right?
Yeah, I would say so.
It's a fun snack to have, and they're enjoyed in many countries around the world, but especially in regions where cassava grows abundantly, Africa, Asia, and South America specifically.
Yep.
So maybe not grown that much natively in America, in North America, or in Europe, but we're talking about a root vegetable that's prevalent around the world.
Yes.
Right. They're a tasty snack. Also a solid source of energy. They're gluten-free. They're a healthier alternative to regular chips. Minimal oil and salt added to them for their flavor.
Yeah.
And I think sort of the way that our cultures are going with people being a little bit more in tune with the foods that they're eating.
Yep.
They're maybe people are more prone to reach for cassava as opposed to a potato chip, right? And so it is a perennial plant, like I mentioned, tropical climates, well-drained soils. If you're trying to grow them, Mitch, I don't know if you have a green thumb or anything like that, but when you start, they grow for about 8 to 18 months before harvesting, and basically millions of people eat them all around the world. Boiled, steamed, fried. Chips aren't the only way to have them.
Oh yeah.
They can be processed into flour. You can have cassava flour to make breads, to make pastries.
Oh wow.
But I think most commonly they're known as chips. They are, like most chips, they're a carbohydrate. They have a lot of essential nutrients. There's vitamin C. There's folate. There's calcium and phosphorus in them. Low protein, which I don't know.
I was gonna say, geez, what does this magic plant not do?
Yeah, I don't know. I personally, as someone that I think about nutrition.
Oh no, I'm with you. I'm with you. I was just more impressed than anything I was like, wow, this sounds like a pretty good thing. Why have I never heard of this?
What I was gonna say is I think protein's overrated. Is what I was gonna say.
Oh.
I think. I could go on a diatribe about this, but I think people are like, oh, you need protein snacks. If you're not a bodybuilder, you're probably eating too much protein if you're reaching. But that's for my other podcast. I actually have talked about this on another podcast. There is some cultural significance or cultural importance. It's like, it's often featured in traditional cuisines and culinary practices, and it's passed down through generations in these areas. Some cultures, cassava is used in religious ceremonies or as a symbol of abundance and prosperity. And cassava farming and processing may play a vital role in local economies, providing livelihoods for farmers and supporting rural communities. So I don't think, it's definitely not a table staple here in North America, but I think other places around the world, people are very accustomed to the plant, and I'm excited to try these chips. Mitch, you picked them up for us.
So
they're the Heaven and Earth brand.
Yeah, so when I was searching for them online, right, I did notice that a lot of them were advertised as being like a very healthy food. You know what I mean? Like,
of course.
Like very friendly to, like you said, gluten-free diets. Friendly towards, like, people are into like the paleo diet, right? People are into oh god, what's that other really popular diet?
Wait, this couldn't be on paleo. It's high carbs, right?
No, I saw a thing that was like, one of them literally said like paleo diet friendly for some reason. But
yeah, marketing.
Yeah,
that's the reason.
But anyway, my point is I noticed that a lot of them are advertised as like healthy alternative to potato chip, to a lot of stuff like that. And also, we were gonna try to get another brand originally, but I was like, oh wow, these are really cheap. They're only like $4 a bag, and then they wanted like $25 in shipping, so we got these instead.
Yeah, that's better. That's better. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Cassava chips, crisp roots, cassava root, peeled, sliced, and salted to perfection. This is no ordinary chip. Heaven and Earth artisanal cassava chips are an elevated taste experience, according to the bag. Mitch, we both opened our bags. I'm going to give it a sniff. Smells pretty good. Smells like, maybe like a dull chip. Kind of looks like a Pringle, and I'm looking at it.
Yeah,
I pulled one out here.
I can cut. It's interesting for a couple of reasons. Number one, I can tell that it's like a very thin chip because like I can see the light coming through it. You know what I mean?
Right.
But and you can even like make out like the grain of like the root texture, which is kind of neat.
For sure.
But it also seems like a fairly sturdy thing. Like I'm kind of like putting some pressure on it where I feel like a normal potato chip, like a Lay's would like break. But like this, or even like a Pringle, but like this thing's not snapping.
All right, well, let's crunch into them. You want to crunch into them first?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, I mean, it does look nice crunch.
Ooh.
I wonder what do you think? What are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, the first thing is there's definitely way more like rigid and sturdy than I expected. Way more.
They are thick. Yeah.
Right, but that's the thing is like they're
thick
not
and strong.
They're not necessarily
thick to the eye.
Right? It's like, they're robust. That's the word I'm going to use. They're robust. You know what I mean? But
they are thick with 2 C's. That's how I think of them. And yeah, robust is a great word for them. They're good though. They're just salted.
Yeah.
Right? I could see some other flavors being put on these. It'd be nice to have like, I'm a big paprika fan.
Oh, that could be fun.
I put paprika on a lot of stuff,
Maybe like a chili or something.
And everything seasoning would be nice.
Oh, yeah. In terms of taste itself, I'm trying to think of what to compare it to. Because like it has like a very specific taste that's like triggering something in my brain, but like I can't like associate it with something.
Have you ever had plantain chips?
No. However, no.
Plantain chips or banana chips.
I've never had them in chip form, but I have had a plantain before, and that's exactly it.
They remind me of plantains a lot, and obviously sort of cultivated differently, right? These are roots that grow underground, where a plantain grows as the fruit on a tree, very similarly to a banana would. But Yeah, these really, really remind me of plantain chips. I've had plantain chips, more often than I've had cassava chips.
Yeah.
And they're not sweet like a banana.
Yeah.
And I always felt like plantains are sort of the savory cousin to the banana, and that's what I'm getting here. They
have like an earthy
They are grown
taste,
like a root. Yes, so they're grown underground, so that makes sense, right?
Almost like a carrot.
Yeah, almost like a carrot. Yeah, I see that. Have you ever had those like veggie sticks that are like carrot?
Yes,
and they sort of remind me of those.
Yeah,
too,
it has that kind of flavor to it a little bit.
Yeah, right. The salt is really. I feel like the salt is doing a lot of work.
Yes, it's almost a bland kind of taste.
Yeah, frankly, I'm not that impressed. I think they're good. Don't get me wrong. I think they're good. I definitely won't throw the bag out. I've had a couple. I have a couple questions for you.
Yeah.
I personally think they'd be paired a lot better with a dip.
I like that idea.
I like the fact that they seem more sturdy. They seem more rigid, right? Like, a chip and a dip has to pair nicely. The chip can't be breaking.
Yeah.
Right? Like,
I would say
you
this
can't
is
be
like
going
perfect.
for something. Yeah, right? Like, I'm thinking my immediate thought was hummus. Right? Sometimes hummus can be a little bit thicker. I don't necessarily go around dipping potato chips in hummus, but I can imagine that if you tried to, the chip would break off relatively easy, as opposed to like a tortilla chip or a pita chip, right, which is going to hold up some more. This is reminding me of that. I would love to pair it with some hummus, or maybe not necessarily salsa.
Oh,
maybe sour cream.
You know what
I don't know.
see?
What do you think?
Well, definitely hummus. I'm not a big hummus fan, but I could definitely see this pairing very nicely with hummus. I could also see it pairing with guacamole.
Wow.
I feel like it has just the right level of like not an overpowering taste, but still like rigid enough to hold the weight of the guacamole. And like it would really, like the little bit of salt that's on this would pair really nicely with like that sort of like kind of soury, vinegary taste of like the guacamole.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
I think that it would go really good with that.
You've totally inspired me. Actually, in my house tonight, my lovely wife and I will be having burrito bowls.
Oh.
I prepped some Chipotle style rice beforehand in the Instant Pot, and I absolutely love sort of a burrito bowl from Chipotle.
Yeah.
So I'm constantly trying to chase that down and make that at home. And I found a pretty good rice recipe that replicates their rice, and I don't think we have any tortilla chips in the house, so I am going to sort of dedicate these as my tribute to the burrito bowl, and we're gonna have. Because
that
we
sounds really good.
I do have avocado. I have avocado, and so that's what I'm gonna do.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pair it with some guacamole, pair it with the burrito bowl, some rice, and some ground.
That
turkey,
actually sounds.
I think, and some beans.
That sounds delicious. Yeah. Like I can just. Trying to find a big one. It seems like I already ate all the big ones in my bag, because the one I pulled out initially was
they kind of do
massive.
seem cracked.
Yeah,
they do seem a lot of like relative. I mean, maybe not bad. I mean, this one's pretty big. I've got some.
Here's another big one. But like, I could see this, like just, bearing the weight of like the rice and like I don't know if you do beans in your burrito bowl, but like with some like pinto beans or some black beans and like a little bit of guacamole and some cheese. Oh my goodness, that sounds absolutely delicious.
Yeah, I'm gonna try that for sure. Like we said, they're not the best, but they're really not the worst. Nutritionally,
I don't hate them.
They're decent. No, I don't hate them. For those people who care, right, we mentioned Heaven and Earth. That's out of Bayonne, New Jersey, distributed in the UK by Kedem Foods, product of Ecuador. So I guess the cassava that's sourced for this are made in Ecuador.
Yeah.
It says store in a cool, dry place. I don't think this bag is going to last very long. I do enjoy them. I'm going to try them with other dips.
I will finish this bag for sure. Right?
Yeah, I will finish this bag within the next couple days for sure. I will say the front of the bag has these very nice circular chips that are like browned nicely on the outside.
Yeah, they
look
like
more
a
like a
Pringle.
Cape Cod chip. Yeah, Like
a
yeah,
perfect
they do. They
shape.
look like
You know what I mean?
a nicely done Pringle, perfect shape. These chips in this bag are not that.
No.
That's sort of bad representation.
No, it is. Yeah. The ones on the
and I'm
front
sure
look
it
a lot
depends on,
thicker too.
Yeah, right, and it depends on the shape of the cassava and like how they're cutting it and stuff. But like the ones on the front seem like they were, it was like a 2-inch cassava, and they cut them all very uniformly. And the ones in the bag, there's no sort of uniform to them. That doesn't necessarily take away from their flavor, but it is kind of like weird representation on the front of the bag. Like it's not quite accurate, but they're not bad. They're really not bad. So let's go to our ranking system, right?
Okay.
We know these are product of Ecuador. We know that these could maybe exist in a land where there are large crustaceans at least, or large spiders.
Well, there's
if you wanna
definitely
have your
spiders that are
imagination.
larger than we have in Rhode Island there, for
Right.
sure.
Yeah, for sure. So, would you pay the import tax? Would you go so far as to travel to the motherland to get these?
I think the spiders would keep
you
me away.
skip on them?
I think the spiders would
themselves
keep me away
would-
from the
yeah.
motherland. But in all seriousness, I don't know. I'm really torn because I don't hate them by any means.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
I don't see myself jumping for joy at cassava chips either. Like, they're just a little too bland for me, right? Maybe if they were paired with, like, a dip, or if they had a different seasoning, like, maybe even some, like, Old Bay or something could be good on these. You know what I mean? But, like,
Yeah.
just as they stand right now, like, these regular ones with, like, just a little bit of salt and a little bit of palm oil or whatever, I'm definitely not paying the import tax. Not because I hate them, but just because, like, I'm not impressed. Like,
Yeah, right. You need to save your tax. You need to save the import tax so you can buy friggin' hummus.
exactly, right? So it's a catch-22.
Yeah.
But at the same time, these are definitely not on the level of, like, I would never eat these again. These are not like the Haribo
Right.
gummies. You know what I mean?
No.
They're just, like,
No.
unremarkable.
Yeah.
Like, if I saw them, not even in a store, I don't think I would buy these for the sake of, like, looking to buy them. But, like, if I was in a situation where there were cassava chips, I'd have them. I'd eat them. I'd snack on them. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, same. Yeah, I'm not gonna grab them at Whole Foods or Trader Joe's, wherever the hell you buy something like this in person.
Yeah.
Like I'm not necessarily looking for them in the natural food section at you're more of a standard grocery store that has, like, natural food chips and stuff.
Yeah.
The bag itself doesn't really impress me that much. Yeah, I'm very much on the same plane as you. So, yeah, not going to pay the import tax. I would try them again. I would definitely grab them from, like, a craft services table.
Oh,
or
for
something
sure,
like that,
for sure. Like, if we were on a job and there was a
what-
bag of cassava chips, I'd eat them.
Yeah.
But, like,
Yeah,
I'm gonna go first for, like, other things, though, probably. Like, I'm gonna go for, like, if there's Pringles, or if there's, like, Cape Cod chips,
Yeah.
or, like, a Frito,
Yeah.
or something like that, right?
Yeah, so on terms of, like, our video game ranking scale, I'm going to go B tier. I'm giving them a B tier.
I'm gonna go.
What do you think?
I'm gonna go right solid in the middle C. C tier.
Solid in the middle.
Solid in
C-
the middle
C tier.
C. Not super impressive, not bad, right? All around safe chip that, in the chip tournament, right? Statistically, it wins just as much as it loses.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, C tier is probably more accurate. I'm a big sucker for salt. They are like a nice salt.
Oh, the
delivery,
salt on this is the
method
best
here.
part, in all honesty.
Yeah. And it is non-hydrogenated palm oil,
Yeah.
which
I don't know what that even
whatever.
means.
I don't really care. Yeah. I think palm oil is one of those oils that's, like, terribly sustainable for the internet, like not sustainable.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, for the internet, for the environment.
Yeah.
So that's probably not good. Yeah, they're whatever. The salt is good. I'm gonna try them, like I said, with my dinner. That'll be fun.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear how that goes.
I'll dunk them in some hummus. I'll tell you tomorrow at work.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't know. I definitely won't be reaching for them. Like you said, Pringles, Cape Cod chips, Doritos, a lot of different chip. There's so many chip options.
Oh yeah,
this is definitely sort of middle of the road.
Yeah, even
but
compared to the chips we've had on the show too.
Yeah,
like some of the other ones that we had, like the oil dress chips. Or the
voodoo
zaps,
chips,
the voodoo chips. Those were so good. I know I'm reminiscing about a series that's not even that old, but like,
oh, those are so good.
Like, I would eat 30 bags of voodoo chips before I ate one bag of cassava chips.
Absolutely. I totally agree with you there. Well, thanks, Mitch. Thanks for sharing these stories. Thank you for sharing your fear. Thanks for, getting the courage to do all of that research.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thanks for picking up these chips. And, I think this was a lot of fun. Good episode. And should we tease what we're going to... Is there any way that we can tease what we're going to do next? Maybe you can just tiptoe around something.
Oh, okay.
Or should we just keep it secret? I'm sorry to put you on the spot.
Oh, that's all right. That's all right. I will say that, during this episode, right, we heard some stories from some servicemen. It might not be the last time we hear some stories from some servicemen.
That's great. Perfect. That's a great little tease. Thank you so much, Mitch.
You're welcome, buddy.
Thank you to all of you for listening or watching. If you do happen to be watching on YouTube, it's great for you to give us a like or subscribe to the channel.
Yep.
Same thing. You can leave us rating and reviews wherever you listen to the show, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. But either way, we're going to keep doing them. We're putting them out once a month at the beginning of the month.
Yep.
Cryptid Nuggets, Beastie Boys Paranormal Adventures, Experience, and we still hopefully are going to travel to a part of the world where we can find those other two Beastie Boys, Jarvis and Mike.
Yeah, well, I heard through the grapevine that I might be able to encounter one of them in person in a couple of weeks in a work environment, but we'll see.
That's true. Yeah, it's true. We will see. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Mitch. Thank you all for listening and watching, and we'll see you on the next one.
Bye.
Decaf left, regular right. Decaf left, regular right. It's very challenging work.